This presentation will focus on two major occurrences that is often too frequent within our criminal justice system. One of those occurrences is the obtainment of false and coercive confessions by police. The second is the problems with poor investigative work done by police and their commitment to charging innocent people with a crime they did not commit. In order to grasp a better understanding of these occurrences, I will focus on a very controversial case that dates back to 1983, a case that is 23 years old but still serves as a reminder that these situations happen. A documentary special on HBO titled Paradise Lost follows the murder case of three young men who were targeted by a town and its law enforcement agency solely based on their unwilling desire to fit in. Damian Echols, the leader of the three determined by the prosecution, Jesse Kelly, and Jason Baldwin. All high school-aged children were charged in the death of three 8-year-old boys in an act to prosecute a satanic act. The three 8-year-old boys were found in a ditch. All were naked. One suffered a cut to the left side of his face, while the other suffered from head trauma and genital mutilation in the Robin Hood Hills of West Memphis. Now that we know a little bit about the case and the charges the older boys face, let's dive into the issues that surrounds the case itself. On May 5th of 1993, Jesse Kelly was arrested by police and taken in for questioning. Kelly, at the time of his arrest, was found to have an IQ of 72, legally making him unable to fully understand the magnitude of the situation, and making him susceptible to coercion. Meaning, he should have had legal counsel present in order to ensure that he was not taken advantage of, which is what happened exactly. After 12 long hours of police interrogation, fatigue, and fear, Kelly broke and gave a false confession that will ultimately lead to the arrest of Damian Echols and Jason Baldwin. Being as though Kelly had given a confession, he was tried alone. The prosecution using the confession as the strongest piece of evidence against him. For the co-defendants, Echols and Baldwin, they faced the trial together. Because of the way the crime had been committed and the nature of the murder, it looked like it was a satanic ritual. Due to the fact that Echols and Baldwin were into heavy metal music and bands such as Metallica and wore dark colored clothing, they fit the description of those types of people who would do that kind of thing. So to the prosecution, it was an open and shut case. Those three young men murdered those young boys, and that was all to it. The documentary did a great job documenting the events that happened during the trial. But upon further research, I was able to find that Echols had suffered from mental illness, having been hospitalized several times and having reported hallucinating. This is the section where I want to shift from the idea of obtaining a false statement and switch gears to the second issue surrounding the case. Law enforcement, in this case, played a major role in the conviction, as it does in many criminal cases. But the lack of investigative work done by the police caused the false incarceration of these young men. In further research, there were at least 4 other suspects that could have had been brought in for questioning, but the effort to find or pursue a motive for these individuals were not made. One mysterious individual, who people refer to as Mr. Bojangles, sticks out in particular. This was an African American man who entered the fast food chain Bojangles, who witnesses reported as being mentally unstable, entered a woman's bathroom, and not to mention the fact that the individual left blood trails within the bathroom. Police were called, but the man had left by then, but there was no effort put towards the idea that this individual may have been linked to the murders. The 3 young men spent 18 years in prison for a crime they had not committed. They were released in 2011 after entering an Alford plea. which means that the men will remain guilty for the crime that they have been tried for, but they will be granted their freedoms. This type of plea is rare within the criminal justice system and is a way for the state government to escape any reparations that may be sought after by the released criminals. The defendants accept the guilty plea, but they maintain the fact that they are innocent. The men were only awarded this Alfred plea because of new DNA evidence that did not link them to the crime. Surprisingly enough, the hair that the police found at the crime was one of an African American male and the hair of a stepfather of one of the children. It is up to the police and the prosecution to do their due diligence in order to make sure that people who commit these crimes pay for what they did. There was simply circumstantial evidence and a false confession that had taken 18 years away from these men. One awaiting death. Mistakes like these cannot and should not happen. But when law enforcement is under immense pressure from the community to find the killer, I can understand how picking the first couple of people they find easier. But these are people's lives we have to remember at stake. Just because it's not you does not mean it will not affect you. In order to improve the mistakes in the criminal justice system, we must have dedicated individuals who are willing to put in the extra man hours to ensure that these mistakes are minimized, if not eradicated. Police are the first step within the criminal justice system, and due to the amount of work they put into a case, will determine the outcome of the suspected individual. The injustices of being wrongfully imprisoned for a crime the state could not clearly acquaint you to is a serious offense, and there needs to be a system of checks and balances that will ensure things like this will not persist.